Belby and Delia were the three oldest ones, and they was quite older than us. And they always had lots of friends in. Sometimes there'd be 40 people here, and my mother would say, go ahead and play, and they had a big bottom up here where we played softball. And
Pitched
then she'd
horseshoes.
cook dinner for them, and pitch horseshoes, and she'd cook dinner for them. And then sometimes they would have dances here. They'd run sets, you know, and they would have people to play music. I guess Uncle Jim played for them. I don't know.
Daddy calls that.
And your dad called sets, and my mom played with them too, and we had a good time. We really had a good time here. But after we grew up, there wasn't many people like that. It wasn't the same as it was when they was. And I was very lonely. I didn't have nobody to play with. And nobody my age had to go so many miles to school. And I was never very happy. I was really lonely at that time. But they just wasn't the same after we grew up. Three youngest ones is so much difference in the age. That we was like two
I
families.
was 7
you know.
years old when the 6 was born.
So it was just like having two families. And I had two brothers, one on each side of me, and they was pretty mean to me. They climbed trees, and I couldn't hardly climb trees. They'd go swimming, and I couldn't swim, and they about drowned me. Poor little thing.
Tell about the.
I never did like to make it, you know.
Tell about the June apple tree.
Oh well, we had the June apple tree named, and the top of it was California, and they go up in California and they get the big apples. And I could just get down no good down the bottom of the branch. It was all a corner, and they wouldn't give me any good apples. Of course, I'd find some on the ground.
And she had a pet chicken, followed her everywhere. And she stepped backwards out of the, she come down the apple tree and stepped backwards and squished
Stepped on my little chicken and killed it.
her little chicken. Well, Wendell jumped down and he was trying to kill her with rocks. She was screaming. Mother had to go with them both before she'd take that chicken with her. And
We'd knock on the floor and he'd come to us and we'd feed it flies.
he'd go cow hunting, go up to Zion somewhere, and she'd hide from it, and that chicken just follow her and holler, you know.
A sweet little pet. Then they had the dog too. They had Hector. And one time they went to catch some groundhog. Was digging after a groundhog, and Hector got in the way, and Rick hit him with the
Rick.
pick. I mean, it seemed like it was Rick. Cecil hit him with the pick, and so it knocked him out, and he went rolling down the hill, and Bill took off after Cecil. He was going to kill him for killing the
Bill,
dog.
it was Wendell, lady.
I mean, dog.
It's good we're getting this filmed now before Mom's mind completely goes.
It seems like it's another world, really. I'm talking about. Let's see now. Cecil took off. Wendell took off down the hill after Cecil, and Cecil was chasing the dog to see if he's hurt. And Wendell was trying to kill Cecil because he thought, trying to hit him because he thought he killed the dog. And that's the way it was. He liked the animals better than he liked us. See, Wendell was really a mean kid, spoiled to death, and he had a temper too. But he had a little duck pond down there, and he had a little raft on his
We
duck
had a
pond.
fish pond. We had a fish pond down
And he
for the
fed
parking
this.
lot.
He had a raft, and he put the bread up on this raft, and the little ducks would go up. These little yellow ducks, you know,
Did
and he'd spend hours and hours down there. And he used to hide from her too when he was little. And Belby thought sure she'd lost him forever. He'd hide, and she'd call him, and he wouldn't come out. She had to always babysit. So she was about scared to death, and he was.
Oh,
They hunted for him. How long did they hunt for him?
We never hunted very long. I was in the garden down below the barn, the hole, and then she was up here
She was
warm.
scared to death.
And she thought he was from me. I found him hid behind the log down there at the honk pen.
He just hid from her.
I started to holler for Dad, and when I went down there to holler for Dad, we'd lost Wendell. There he said, playing one nature.
But the Lord was with us, and He took care of us, or we'd never been raised, and there's so many things. I almost got bit by a copperhead one time. We was going up the dead end to pay, and we found this little baby. We found this little baby bird. Me and Wendell did, and we said, oh, we couldn't put it back in the nest. It was too high, so we put it in this hollow log, and we went to the dead end to play, and we got through playing what we was doing. And then we came back, and I said, we'll see about the bird. And I stuck my hand in there, and I pulled it out, couldn't see the bird, and this copperhead stuck its head out right behind my
It
hand.
had the bird charms. It couldn't move, and she's picked up. And I said, I told Dad about her sleeping off and doing that. And he went up there, and he
It
said,
didn't have the bird charm.
and he went up there, and he says, biggest copperhead he ever seen in his life. He didn't know why it didn't bite her.
Yeah, I know I didn't know. I don't know what
But Mother, if she'd have been here to whipped them both for slipping off.
Well, my gosh, we had to play.
She was down there saying,
You never got hurt.
well, that's, if you got snake bit, you got hurt.
Well, the reason, the bird was a tiny little baby bird. It wasn't charmed. It fell out of the nest, and we didn't want to leave it on the ground, so we put it in the log.
Well, the snake was in there with
And
it.
the snake had already swallowed the bird, and it was the only ones left in there was the snake. And then we went and caught a ground squirrel in an old hollow tree. There's a branch, you know, a limb, and they cut it there, and they cut it here, and they stopped at the ends of it, and we brought the ground squirrel to the house. And then we chopped a hole in the log and got the ground squirrel out and put it in a cage, and we had a ground squirrel bed. Of course, we didn't keep it long. Got away again. Old Hector would have eat it up if he'd got to it.
So your mom and dad, how'd they meet and all, do you know?
Well, Daddy was raised on the head of Clover Lake Creek, and Grandfather Hall sold 600 acres of land on the head of Clover Lake Creek where we sat the other day.
Alfred
Not stole them, sold
Alfred
them.
Hall. I said sold them.
Oh, she said stole them.
And so he
That
bought
polecat.
this place on Bear Branch. He bought Arthur Dixon out. That was Uncle John Dixon's daughter owned the place. And they moved over here on Bear Branch. And Dad met Mother. He only lived 2 years on Bear Branch till him and Mother married, and they moved here.
How'd
where
you
we
say
are.
you met Mom?
Well, they lived over on Bear Branch, and
I know, but whose house did they go to?
He'd come over to Grandpa's, you know, with Jim and them, and they met.
Oh.
And Si said it, that Dad, he wouldn't let Dad talk to Mom. He kept him up making him birds and little sleds and things. So Si took
If
up,
Mom seen right then, he'd make a good husband.
and so
She was a beautiful young lady.
Si took up with Dad,
He
you
was
know, and
handsome.
loved him so well. When Mom and Dad moved out, Dad brought him with him, and he kept him for 18 years.
Dad loved children.
So
They
when
never
Si
bothered me.
had to leave home over here on Bear Branch, he said this is the only home that he ever knowed besides, you know.
Did she ever get after him with big switches like she did me?
No, Si never did do nothing.
Oh.
Nothing but aggravate me. I had a pet pig, and Mother'd be busy cooking. I fed him down a 4-pound lard bucket.
I imagine he helped her a lot too by getting wood and stuff.
Well, you know he did, and he'd had a bale, and he'd put that on my pig's head, and it couldn't see, and he'd run over a rock wall, or just turn somersets, and I'd fall over and scream and cry, and she'd go make the side come out and bawl him out.
Did he have to walk to school by himself?
Yeah, he walked to the school by himself till Frank got big enough to go to school with him.
Did she buy his school clothes and
She
everything?
sure did.
She bought all his clothes.
She certainly did.
So Si was older than Frank?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Si
So
was
Si
born,
really seemed to be the
Si was born in
oldest
that-
son almost.
He
Si
was just like
was,
the oldest son. that's
Si
right.
was born in 1903, and Frank was born in 1911.
Actually, she raised 7 children instead of.
Now how with Jim and Si and all the kids and stuff in this little house, how did everybody stay?
But we had plenty of room.
There was always room.
But it seemed like there might have been 12 people staying here
Well,
at a time.
Belmy and Deli and Letty slept in one bed. We all had to sleep together.
And
So-
we had a room out, we had 3 rooms. We had a room out
Oh yeah,
there
had a
on the
room on the
porch.
end of the porch.
Out
That
there,
was
we had a
Jim's room.
bedroom out here on the.
Jim's
So at the
room.
time, there was really just the room we're in and the bedroom now. There was no kitchen on behind you.
No,
And there was no other bedroom. There was no bathroom, of course. So it was just these 2 rooms.
that's right.
And then a porch was a room. And then there was the stone house later on.
Yeah, Stone
Yeah.
House later on.
Oh, and the shack too?
Of
Or
course,
did
we
that come out
got
No,
a
the
bigger
shack
family than
come
that. We had Bill too.
Well, Buell didn't, they all
He didn't live at the same time Si did.
No, Si was the only one lived here.
But I remember how we
Besides
ate at
us.
the table. We all sat at the table, and the men was a table full of men, just about, wasn't it?
They was 80
When I
at the
remember.
time.
And they always ate first, and then we ate.
And there was a separate kitchen, right? A kitchen.
But not
At
when
the
I first
time.
remember. It was back here,
No, the kitchen was back on that.
and it was a big.
They was
big
16,
thing.
they was 16 by 18 feet rooms. You could put
And
4 and 5
The
beds.
stove and the
in
table
there.
had plenty of room for that, and there's 2 beds in there too.
Mhm. And then we had this bedroom, Jim's room was out on the end floor.
And so there was, you did the well, you had to draw water and bring it in, was there a pump in it?
Sure, we had to draw one in front of him.
Did he dig the well right after they was married?
Dad dug a well in 1911, the day Frank was born. He's the first one got a drink out of that well, and him and Uncle
Well,
John
how did
Smith
they get water before that, the Caracom Spring?
They had a spring out there.
That
They
same
had a
spring? Oh,
the
it
same
would be
spring.
At the
out
Out
barn?
there by that pine, the Caracom.
Oh, Henry Marsh found that pine when they was building the house here.
And she made all her soap. She made homemade soap to wash with.
Everybody made homemade soap.
And they heated their wash water in a big tub, and they always heated the water and got the wash water, and then they put more on. They boiled all the white clothes. They boiled them,
Sure.
and they all came out real white. We hung them on big lines.
So your dad never worked in the mines?
No, Dad never worked in that.
So how did he get along?
Well, he worked at Lynch.
He was a farmer.
He started working at Lynch in 1913 when Lynch mine started up.
You mean he worked in the mine?
No, I'm
Oh.
fixing to tell you.
Okay.
He worked and helped open up the mines, and when they went underground, Daddy quit. And he made furniture. He sold furniture to New York. He made bedsteads, he made rocking chairs, he made stools, and he made anything that people. He made bedsteads for Miss Moderate Pine Mountain School, and she sold them in New York. They didn't want them where you put springs in them. They wanted them the old-fashioned way. They was bore holes in the railings of
Put
it,
cords in.
and he had to cord them
With
with
rope.
rope. And he sold them for $50 a piece.
And he's also a bricklayer, a carpenter.
And he helped make all of those
He could do
buildings,
anything.
Pine Mountain School, you're saying.
Yeah, there were also some other log houses around that he helped build.
Yes.
He helped build the first school at Kingdom Come for Miss Ritchie, but it was made of logs.
Not
And
that
it-
one now that's made of stone.
No,
Six
it
of them.
burnt down. And then they built another log house down there, and it burnt down. And then Dad helped build the old school, the one they're not teaching in now. He helped build that
Big
one.
stone, two-story stone
That big
building.
two-story house.
He had very little education. I don't know how far he went in school, but my dad could read blueprints and do anything like that, follow directions, plans,
And he
everything.
hewed logs and built log houses. He helped build the cabin over here at burnt down.
And he done that by hand. And he made all of our fences like that. And he covered the house with homemade shingles. He made the shingles. He made about everything that we worked with. And then he was working on the lathe, making furniture and stuff. He would make his tools in the blacksmith shop.
Yeah,
He did
he made all
He'd
his
make
tools.
it.
He had blacksmiths.
He had the knowledge. He had
And then people,
I'm
when
telling you, he was
anybody
brilliant.
wanted to go to the
Brilliant.
shop, they had to plow the shop or horseshoes to work on. Dad always done that.
And your brother Chuck is a lot like your dad. Our dad.
Yeah, he sure
Because
is.
he's just got, things just come to him, he does them. Without having to really work at it, he just,
Dad
and
could
he's
look at
gifted to
anything.
carving. He'd sit around in the winter and carve. He'd carve things like he'd carve one time he made her what was it, a shoe?
I still got my
With a foot
stuff.
in the shoe, and made the whole leg, just sitting around carving after supper.
I've got it.
He
here.
carved to relax like Chuck does to do things, He carved to relax and stuff. And we have a lot of things he made like that.
And then I'd set up, he went out and cut a hickory tree down and he shaved the bark off of it. And then I would hold it and he would edge it and get it and roll it up in rolls, and he'd put it then out in the water and let it soften. And then I'd set up the night and help him put these bottoms
Bottom
in
of
the
the
chairs.
seats in the chair.
Like them old Pine Mountain School, And he'd make big long, that's what I hunted for, is one of them stools. The stools was as long as that couch.
And another thing he would do, in the spring, in the summer when we go to pick blueberries in the woods, huckleberries, he'd make all the pouches. He'd go out and skin a tree, and he'd make pouches to pick berries in. You put it on your side.
I'd make me a pouch this spring, now Ari Honnold's, I'd make
You'd have to look, you could draw it on the paper, how to make the pattern.
And then he loved
Put a
to
little stick through the top and put bark to it. Everything's made of bark.
He would go every fall, and Alec Boggs and Alec's oldest boy and Dad and Cecil, they went up there on Cloverleaf Creek, Big Moxon, where we was at the other day. And they would camp out and ginseng. And they'd dig $200 or $300 worth of ginseng, you know, as the breweries got red, you know, ginseng.
And another member of the family was old Bob, he was our mule, and Dad plowed it all the time. And he plowed all the fields with him and everything. And we kept him till he died.
We had a corn hoeing up here one time. We had 2 mules and 27 people hoeing corn. That was a lot of fun.
So how the fields and stuff, obviously this place looked a lot different. How was it basically different from now, the woods from now to now?
It was
The
cleared
whole
and
mountain was
corn.
cleared out.
Yep.
And the timber that growed on it then was big chestnut trees. There wasn't very many poplars. Chestnut was the most, and lots of the chestnut logs would be 10 and 12 feet through.
And a blight came right through and killed them all.
And the blight started in 1923 and killed them.
So that sister was born. And then after that, they cut them all down and cleared the field.
And see, when we had the chestnut trees, the hogs would get fat on chestnuts.
Oh yeah, you just
And you'd put them up and feed them corn
You
for
just
2 or 3 weeks.
get
and
your
then put
piggies
them-
and mark them. Put your mark on them, turn them out in the woods, and didn't see them till fall. They lived on.
Somebody asked me the other day what Dad's mark was.
And then you bring them in and put them in a pen and fatten them. You didn't have to feed them. There was grain. There was all kinds of nuts and everything on the side.
They was,
in the woods for the hogs to eat.
there's white oak acorns, water oak acorns, and chestnut, and all that stuff.
And I guess the cows would go outside too. There wasn't no stop on.
Oh, there was no stuff cloth in it. We'd have 100 head of hogs.
And you know whose hogs they were by your mark. Everybody had their own mark. I don't know what my dad's mark was. Do you?